Hi, I'm Marty Nimco. This is another of my thought experiments. This one is called the Explainer Edition. I'm tired of reading and not understanding. I'm tired of writing and my readers not understanding. So what do you think of the idea of an Explainer Edition? The reader online or on Kindle could click on a button to reveal the author, maybe just text, maybe video, maybe even a hologram of the author explaining key sentences. Push the button a second time, and the author explains his or her thinking behind the sentence. For example, he or she might want to preempt an objection, or be more literary to create aesthetic appeal, or be more concise to avoid boring the reader. Well, here's an example of how an explainer edition might be used. This is a very short piece I recently wrote, and because, as usual, I've written it to be self-explanatory, I'm going to dispense here with explaining what the sentences mean and just present my thinking behind key sentences. The thing was called The Monitor, a thought experiment. I'm glad we have the monitor. If you don't know what it is, I'll explain. It's a chip embedded in our brains. By the way, my little comment there is I use that because it is likely to be ubiquitous and potent in the coming decades. And I continue with the text. You see, back in the year 2030, I like the idea of being futuristic, people had become so hypocritical and crime had become so bad that government had to do something about it. I picked on hypocrisy because I do think it's an under-discussed problem, not just because it belies professed sanctimony, but because that distorts what public opinion actually is if people aren't being honest about what they believe. They're just hypocritical about it. Back to the text. So, over the decades, government found ways to increase altruism and decrease crime. Last year, the year 2059, President Chelsea Clinton, and here's my thoughts, I do think there's a chance she will become president. We already see her laying the foundation, but not jumping in prematurely. So, I saw that as an opportunity to insert that fresh thought into this little thought experiment. Anyway, as her last act before her final term ended, she issued an executive order. Now, because the monitor, as I'm going to describe it, is a major change, it should be voted on by Congress. By making it an executive order, this and the next sentence subtly criticize presidents' increasing use of executive orders to skirt Congress. Now back to the text. The order mandates that above-average altruism earns extra stimulations of the brain's pleasure center, and below-average altruism is punished with aversive stimulation. I was thinking about whether I should use a word other than, aversive, like negative, but aversive is the accurate term, and I decided to go with that. And if the anti-altruistic behavior stayed extremely bad, I thought about a more complicated word than bad, but I thought that was most accurate and simple. Like a recidivist heroin dealer, I tried to think of the most anti-altruistic person I could think of. I was going to use crack, but I didn't want the racial overtones to get in the way. Like a recidivist heroin dealer, after 3 warnings, that felt like a moderate amount. The miscreant, I chose that word carefully. Again, it's to describe somebody who's just intrinsically bad. The miscreant, quote, completed. Now, that's a word that I chose because it's an indictment of wordsmiths who come up with mollifying terms, even in this case, for murder. Completed. And back to the text. After 3 warnings, the miscreant completed, that is, received a painless impulse to the brain, died, and the body was recycled. I was careful to use the word impulse rather than shock, because I didn't want to, pardon the pun, a charged word there. Anyway, that sentence, that whole concept of the being recycled is a dig on hypocrites who would care about recycling a body they just murdered. And more broadly, the example of the monitor is an updated variant of philosopher John Rawls' critique of utilitarianism, that behaviors that serve the common weal may violate an even more foundational principle, in this case some measure of freedom, even for recidivist heroin dealers. Back to the text. The monitor has worked well, much kindness, little hypocrisy, even less crime, and very few completions. Even extreme miscreants have gotten scared straight at the thought of getting completed. that sentence gives voice to the case for utilitarianism. It's a way to balance the likely revulsion that many, if not most, of the readers are going to feel about implementing the monitor. So back to the text. So that's my thought experiment of the day. In your opinion, would society's increased net well-being justify using the monitor? Again, my comment there is I ended that by encouraging the reader's engagement, asking what they think. So now, in that spirit, what do you think about the idea of having books, maybe especially poems, having an explainer edition, in which the reader could opt to get the author's explanation of what he or she said in plain English, plus the thinking behind it? In any event, that thought experiment is called the Explainer Edition. As usual, I welcome your thumbs up and accept your thumbs down. I always look forward to your comments, and especially like it if you hit the share button below. Share on your social media so that my efforts can have broader impact. And I am flattered if you choose to subscribe to my channel, and certainly would welcome you taking a look at any of my 35 books. Most relevant to this would be thought experiments, but all 35 are on Amazon. In any event, I thank you for watching. I am Marty Nemko.